Hi guys, I'm Prateek Singh, and in this video we're going to talk about settlement. Now, settlement has changed a lot over the years, and we'll talk about how settlement happens right now. Earlier in the module, when we introduced the forwards contract, where the buyer was paying money in exchange for gold, if that transaction had gotten through, then buyer would have paid a certain amount to the seller and received physical gold. Now, that sort of settlement is called the physical settlement. To make that clear, a settlement is what happens after the expiry of a contract. This is when the buyer and seller have to fulfill their obligations and a transaction is actually executed. So in our earlier example where the gold was physically received, that is a physical settlement, which means that money is paid to receive the underlying physically. Now, this also happens with respect to the stock market. The settlement price is what you need to know next. The settlement price is the closing price on the expiry date, and it's around this price that the buyer and seller fulfill their obligations. The way physical settlement works is very simple. The buyer, or the person who's long, the person who's taking the shares, pays 600 shares multiplied by the settlement price on expiry day and receives 600 shares physically. So he'll see 600 shares physically in his DP account. Now, when you're actually trading a futures contract and you're long, as you approach the last week of expiry, the margins actually increase because you're nearing physical delivery. So margins go beyond what is specified in span plus exposure. To understand more about this, I would recommend you read the quick note on Varsity right here. Physical settlement happens in stock futures. Similarly, if you are short futures, on expiry day, you have to fulfill your obligation by giving those 600 shares at the settlement price. So it's important to note that as you approach expiry, you have to have those number of shares that you're short in your DP account, or you should exit that position. Now, that's what a physical settlement is. There's also a different kind of settlement called a cash settlement. In this type of a settlement, only money is netted off based on profits and losses, and there's no exchange of the underlying. For example, if you are long a company at 100 rupees and the current price is 105, that's a 5 rupee profit. You will earn 5 rupees multiplied by the number of shares you are long. On the other side, the short seller will have to pay 5 rupees multiplied by the number of shares. This is called a cash settlement. The cash settlement happens at the settlement price. So all index futures like Sensex or Nifty are cash settled because you can't really take delivery of the index itself. What's important to note is that if you're long any futures contract, the margin increases beyond span and exposure as you approach expiry. An easy way to deal with this if you don't have that amount of money with you, or you don't want to get into the hassle of calculating margins as you're approaching expiry, is exiting before expiry so that you don't have to deal with this. And if you're a short seller, you have to make sure that you have those number of shares in your DP account, and that may not be true, especially if you're a trader. So it's best avoided if you don't want to get in this hassle to exit way before expiry or a few days before expiry. That's something that I always do.